The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Daniel Cruz walked through them with his head held high. Behind him came Admiral Catherine Powell, her military boots clicking against the polished floor. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any stadium on Earth. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around a central platform. Beings from 12 different alien species watched the two humans approach. Daniel had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. 20 years of diplomatic service, 10 years of studying alien languages and customs, and now he carried the weight of 8 billion human lives on his shoulders. The message he brought today would either save countless worlds or be ignored like so. Many warnings before, the Council had existed for over 50,000 years. These species had built empires that stretched across galaxies. They had technologies that humans were only beginning to understand, and they looked at humanity the way adults look at children playing with toys, amusing, harmless, not worth taking seriously. Hi. Arbiter Zeleth of the Dominari sat at the highest point of the chamber. His species resembled tall insects with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light like broken mirrors. He had ruled the Council for 3 centuries and had never once voted in favor of a human proposal. Daniel stepped onto the central platform. A beam of light surrounded him, and his image was projected onto screens throughout the chamber. Every eye, every sensor, every consciousness in the room focused on the young human ambassador. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Daniel began. His voice was steady and calm. I come before you today not to ask for aid or resources. I come to deliver a warning. The Void Swarm is coming. The reaction was immediate. Some delegates laughed openly. Others whispered to their neighbors. The Valish representative, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed with colors that indicated amusement. Our deep space probes detected them 14 months ago, Daniel continued, ignoring the mockery. They emerged from the dark space beyond the galactic rim. We tracked them as they entered the Pelleran system. He pressed a button on his wrist device. The chamber's holographic systems activated, showing footage captured by human probes. The delegates fell silent as they watched. The Pelleran system had contained 3 inhabited worlds. 6 billion souls had lived there. Members of a species that had never joined the Council, but had traded peacefully with several member races. The footage showed what happened to them. A cloud of darkness crossed the system. It was not empty space. It was alive. Billions upon billions of entities moved as one, ranging from creatures the size of fighters to massive hive ships larger than moons. They fell upon the first planet like locusts on a field of grain. The planetary defense systems fired. Ships rose to meet the threat. They might as well have thrown stones at an ocean. The swarm consumed everything. They stripped the atmosphere in hours. They broke apart the crust to reach the core. They converted every scrap of matter into more of themselves. 6 days. That was how long it took for 3 worlds and 6 billion lives to disappear completely. When the swarm moved on, nothing remained but cold, dead rocks. The footage ended. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. This is their path, Daniel said, bringing up a star map. A red line traced from the Pelleran system toward Council space. Based on their speed and trajectory, they will reach the Cathani border in approximately 3 years. After that, they will continue inward. Nothing in their path will survive. High Arbiter Zeleth finally spoke. His voice was like dry leaves scraping against stone. Ambassador Cruz, the Council, appreciates humanity's enthusiasm for contributing to galactic security. However, we have monitored the Pelleran region for millennia. Our sensors detected nothing. Your sensors are pointed inward, Catherine said, stepping forward without waiting for permission to speak. Several delegates gasped at the breach of protocol. You watch each other. You monitor trade routes and political rivals, but you stopped looking at the darkness beyond your borders thousands of years ago. We never stopped, Admiral Powell, Zeleth said, his compound eyes focusing on her with clear irritation. You forget your place. Humanity has been a spacefaring species for barely 300 years. You expect us to believe that your primitive technology detected a threat that our advanced systems missed? Catherine did not back down. Our technology found them because we were looking. We place probes in the deep dark because we know that threats come from where you least expect them. Our history taught us that lesson many times. Counselor Morthok of the Valish hegemony floated forward. His jellyfish form pulsed with confident colors. We have seen extinction-level threats before, Ambassador. The Garati Plague, the Machine Rebellion, the stellar collapse of the Fourth Age. Each time, panicked voices warned us that the end was coming. Each time, those warnings proved exaggerated. Humanity is young. You are prone to fear what you do not understand. Daniel took a deep breath. He had expected this response. He had prepared for it, but hearing it still filled him with a cold anger that he kept carefully hidden. Counselor, the Garati Plague killed 2 billion beings before it was contained. The Machine Rebellion destroyed an entire species. These were not exaggerations. They were catastrophes, and the Void Swarm is worse than all of them combined. So you claim, Morthok replied. But your footage could be fabricated. Your projections could be flawed. We have no independent verification of this supposed threat. Then send your own probes, Catherine said. Send your fastest ships to the Pelleran system. See for yourselves what remains. Such an expedition would take months, Zeleth said, and would require resources better spent elsewhere. The Council has more pressing concerns than chasing human nightmares. The vote was called. 11 species voted against mobilization. Only the Fenari, a small avian species that humanity had helped defend from pirates decades earlier, voted with Earth. Their representative, a being covered in blue and silver feathers, met Daniel's eyes with what might have been sympathy. Daniel gathered his materials and prepared to leave. But before he stepped off the platform, he turned back to face the Council one last time. We will prepare alone then, he said. His voice carried through the silent chamber. We will build our fleets and train our soldiers. We will watch the darkness and wait for what is coming. And when the swarm arrives, when your worlds begin to burn, remember this moment. Remember that we warned you. Remember that you chose to do nothing. He transmitted one final data package to every delegate's console, containing all of humanity's research on the swarm. Then he walked out of the chamber with Catherine at his side. Behind them, the Council returned to its regular business. Trade disputes, border negotiations, the endless political games that had occupied them for 50,000 years. The warning from the young species was already being forgotten, but in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, Swarm continued its march. Billions of hungry mouths moved toward the light of civilization. They did not care about politics or pride. They cared only about consumption. And they were patient. The clock had started counting down. President. Laura Mitchell stood at the window of her office on Luna Base, watching Earth rise over the gray horizon. The blue planet looked so peaceful from here. So fragile. 8 billion people lived their lives down there, most of them unaware of what was coming. She intended to keep them safe, no matter what it cost. The door behind her opened, and her senior advisors filed into the room. Admiral Catherine Powell, Ambassador Daniel Cruz, General Christopher Hayes, Commander of Earth's Ground Forces, Dr. Samuel Bennett, Head of Weapons Research, and Commander Nathan Gray, the man she had chosen to oversee the greatest military construction project in human history. Project Ironclad is now active, Laura said, turning to face them. From this moment forward, everything we do is classified at the highest level. Nothing leaves this room without my personal approval. The Council dismissed us. Fine. We will save ourselves and save them too, whether they want our help or not. She activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. Red markers indicated military installations, shipyards, and research facilities spread across every planet and moon. Nathan, give us the status report. Commander Nathan Gray stepped forward. He was a tall man, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen combat on a dozen worlds. He had commanded ships against pirates, rebels, and hostile alien species. Now he faced the biggest challenge of his career. The Neptune shipyards are operating at full capacity, he said. We have 600 vessels currently under construction. By the end of the year, we will have another 400. Our goal is 12,000 combat-ready ships within 3 years. General Hayes whistled softly. 12,000? That is more than the entire Council fleet combined. The Council fleet has not fought a real war in 9,000 years, Catherine said. They have forgotten what it means to build for survival. We never forgot. Nathan continued his report. We are also constructing orbital defense platforms around every human colony. The Sentinel Array will provide layered protection against any invasion force. Each platform carries plasma lances, missile batteries, and fighter bays. Dr. Samuel Bennett took over, his excitement barely contained. He was a small man-wit. Wild hair and thick glasses, but his mind was sharper than any blade. The plasma lance is our primary weapon. It fires concentrated solar matter at near light speed. The temperature exceeds that of a star's core. Nothing we have tested has survived contact. Showed footage of testing runs. Asteroids the size of buildings vaporized instantly. Captured enemy ships melted into slag. Even the heaviest armor lasted only seconds before breaking apart. The Council does not know about this technology, Samuel said. When we joined them, we shared only our basic weapons. The good stuff we kept for ourselves. Laura nodded. This had been a controversial decision at the time. Many had argued that humanity should share everything with their new allies. But Laura's predecessor had been cautious. He had remembered how often alliances failed throughout human history. He had insisted on keeping some secrets, just in case. Now that caution would save them all. What about personnel? Laura asked. General Hayes pulled up another display. Every human colony has implemented mandatory defense training. Adults complete basic combat certification. Children learn evacuation procedures before they learn mathematics. We have 50 million trained soldiers ready for deployment, with another 100 million in reserve. The civilian population? Daniel asked. Cooperative Hayes replied. We told them the truth. Not all of it, but enough. They know something bad is coming. They know we are preparing. Humans have always responded well to honest leadership during crisis. Lieutenant Megan Price entered the room carrying a data tablet. She was young, barely 30, but she had risen quickly through the intelligence ranks. Her specialty was monitoring alien communications, and she had a gift for finding secrets that others wanted to keep hidden. I have the latest intercepts from Council Space, she said. They are still laughing at us. Valish diplomats joking about the frightened apes who saw monsters in every shadow. Dominar generals mocking human military technology as primitive toys. Even species that had been friendly toward humanity were now dismissing the swarm. Warning as paranoid hysteria, the Cathani ambassador told his government. That we would collapse from paranoia within a decade, Megan reported. He recommended reducing trade relations to avoid being contaminated by our fear. Catherine's hands tightened into fists. Let them laugh. When the darkness comes, we will see who is standing. Laura placed a calming hand on her admiral's shoulder. We cannot afford anger right now. We need focus. Every resource, every hour, every mind must be dedicated to preparation. The Council's opinion does not matter. Only survival matters. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed supply chains and training schedules. They debated ship designs and defensive strategies. They planned for scenarios that would give most people nightmares. When the meeting finally ended, Nathan stayed behind. He and Laura had known each other for 20 years. They had served together before she entered politics. He knew her better than almost anyone. You were worried, he said. It was not a question. Laura sat down heavily. I am terrified. We are building the largest military force in human history to fight an enemy we barely understand. If we fail, our species dies. 8 billion people, gone, like the Pelleran. We will not fail. How can you be so certain? Nathan smiled slightly. Because I know what humans can do when our backs are against the wall. We have been fighting for survival since we lived in caves. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived wars that killed millions. We survived ourselves, which was perhaps the hardest challenge of all. He walked to the window and looked out at Earth. Those alien species have had peace for so long that they forgot what struggle means. They look at the universe and see resources to exploit and rivals to outmaneuver. We look at the universe and see danger. We see predators lurking in the darkness, and we prepare. Laura joined him at the window. The council thinks we are paranoid. Paranoid is just another word for ready. When the swarm comes, they will understand. They will see that we were not afraid because we were weak. We were afraid because we knew what fear was for. In the shipyards of Neptune, construction continued around the clock. Workers who had never held weapons trained between shifts. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics to create better armor and faster engines. Across human space, a species that had been dismissed as children prepared to face the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. 3 years. That was all the time they had. 3 years to build an army capable of stopping an enemy that had destroyed civilizations older than human agriculture? It should have been impossible. But humans had always specialized in doing the impossible. In the council chamber, the alien delegates continued their political games, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that the young species they mocked was forging itself into a weapon. They would not understand until it was far too late to prepare themselves. The swarm drew closer with each passing day, and humanity watched the darkness, waiting for the storm to arrive. The first reports came from the Kethany border station at midnight, Earth Standard Time. Lieutenant Megan Price was monitoring communications when the distress signals began flooding in. She listened to the chaos for exactly 30 seconds before running to wake Admiral Catherine Powell. "They are here," she said. Those 2 words changed everything. The void swarm had arrived exactly where human projections had predicted. They emerged from the darkness like a living wave, billions of entities moving with terrible purpose. The Kethany Defense Fleet, considered the 3rd most powerful in the galaxy, moved to intercept them. Catherine watched the battle footage in the war room, alongside President Laura Mitchell and the rest of the command staff. The Kethany ships were beautiful, sleek vessels that represented thousands of years of engineering advancement. They fired weapons that could crack planets and launched fighters by the thousands. It did not matter. The swarm absorbed the attacks like water-absorbing raindrops. Their smaller units swarmed over the Kethany ships, tearing them apart piece by piece. Their larger hive ships fired back with weapons that seemed to bend space itself, causing entire squadrons to simply cease to exist. 47 hours, Nathan said quietly, when the last Kethany ship went silent. The 3rd most powerful fleet in the galaxy lasted 47 hours. The room was silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The council species had believed themselves invincible. They had built their entire civilization on the assumption that no external threat could truly challenge them. That belief had just died with the Kethany fleet. Counselor Varoth of the Kethany sent a desperate transmission to Earth. His species resembled tall, elegant humanoids with skin like polished marble. Now his face showed only fear. "Ambassador Cruz, you were right. We should have listened. Please, we need your help. The swarm is moving toward our homeworld. 3 billion people will die if we cannot stop them." Daniel looked at Laura. The decision was hers to make. She was the president. She commanded the military. And she had to choose whether to risk human lives saving species that had mocked and dismissed them for 3 years. "Convene the war cabinet," she said. They gathered in the Strategic Planning Center, a room buried deep beneath Luna Base. Holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. The swarm was a spreading red stain, consuming everything in its path. Already 6 systems had fallen. Billions were dead or fleeing. "If we deploy now," General Hayes said, pointing to the map, "we can establish a defensive line at the Meridian Nebula. The nebula's electromagnetic interference will disrupt swarm coordination. Its narrow passages will funnel them into kill zones where our superior firepower can be most effective. We would be protecting species that laughed at us," Catherine said. Her voice was flat, but her eyes burned with old anger. "Species that called us frightened apes? Species that dismissed our warning and did nothing while we built the fleet that could save them. I know, Laura said. Believe me, I know. But what happens if we do nothing? Nathan pulled up projections on the display. If the swarm consumes the council species, they grow stronger. Every world they devour adds to their numbers. Every technology they capture gets incorporated into their collective. By the time they reach human space, they could be 10 times larger than they are now. We stop them now, Samuel added, or we face a much bigger enemy later. The math is simple, even if the emotions are not. Daniel spoke for the first time. There is another consideration. When this is over, the galaxy will remember what we did. If we save them, they will never dismiss humanity again. We will have proven our worth with actions, not words. If we do nothing, we might survive, but we will be alone in a galaxy that knows we could have helped and chose not to. Laura closed her eyes. She thought about the weight of the decision. Human lives against alien lives. Pride against practicality. Revenge against responsibility. We are not them, she finally said. We do not abandon others to darkness, even when they abandoned us. Admiral Powell, you have command of the fleet. Get our people to the Meridian Nebula. We are going to war. The orders went out within the hour. 8,000 warships activated their engines and prepared for hyperspace jumps. 3 million soldiers received their deployment orders. Families said goodbye, knowing they might never see each other again. Commander Nathan Gray stood on the bridge of the carrier Relentless, the flagship of the human fleet. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for 3 years. They were ready. All ships report ready for jump, his tactical officer reported. Nathan opened a channel to the entire fleet. His voice would be heard on 8,000 ships by 3 million people. All hands, this is Commander Gray. In a few minutes, we will jump to the Meridian Nebula. We will face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations older than human agriculture. An enemy that the galaxy's greatest powers could not stop. An enemy that shows no mercy and takes no prisoners. He paused, letting his words sink in. The council species laughed at us. They called us children. They said we were too young and too weak to matter. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. We did not build this fleet because we were afraid. We built it because we knew this day would come. We knew that when the darkness arrived, someone would have to stand against it. And we knew that someone would be us. Around him, he could feel the crew standing straighter. Fear was still there, but it was being pushed aside by something stronger. Pride, determination, the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. Some of us will not come back. That is the price of what we do. But every one of us who falls will take 1,000 enemies with them. Every ship we lose will be a ship that died fighting. We are humanity. We crawled out of the mud, split the atom, and reached for the stars. We do not run. We do not hide. We fight. He took a deep breath. All ships, jump on my mark. May whatever gods you believe in watch over us all. Mark. 8,000 ships tore holes in space and vanished into hyperspace. They left behind families who prayed, colonies that held their breath, and a species that had bet everything on this single moment. The Battle of Meridian was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Behind them, Council watched with growing horror as the humans did what no one else had dared to do. They watched the fleet of the species they had dismissed charge directly into the jaws of death. Some began to wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about humanity all along. But wondering would not be enough. Only blood and fire would settle the question now. The Meridian Nebula stretched across 3 light-years of space, a vast cloud of gas and dust that glowed with the light of newborn stars. It was beautiful. It was also about to become the largest graveyard in galactic history. Admiral Catherine Powell stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unconquered, watching her tactical displays. The human fleet had arrived 6 hours ahead of the swarm, giving them time to position themselves in the nebula's narrow passages. 8,000 ships spread across the battlefield like pieces on a chessboard, Swarm contact in 15 minutes, her sensor officer reported. Estimated enemy numbers for billion individual units. 1,200 hive ships. A known number of support vessels. 4 billion. The number was almost impossible to comprehend. Every ship in the human fleet would have to destroy 500,000 enemies just to break even. The math was not in their favor. But humans had never been good at math when it came to war. They had always been better at will. All ships, execute pattern Omega, Catherine ordered. Draw them into the corridor. Make them come to us. The human fleet began to move. Smaller ships darted forward, firing weapons and then retreating. They were bait, designed to make the swarm chase them into the nebula's natural choke points. It was a dangerous job. Not everyone who volunteered would survive. The swarm arrived like a living tsunami. They poured out of hyperspace in numbers that defied belief, a sea of hunger and destruction that blocked out the stars. The smaller units were biological, creatures grown for war with claws and acid and teeth. The larger ships were mechanical, or perhaps both biological and mechanical fused. Together in ways that human science could not explain, they saw the human ships and charged. They did not think about strategy or tactics. They only knew hunger. They are following the bait, Nathan reported from the Relentless. First wave entering the corridor now. Catherine watched the swarm units funnel into the narrow passage between two dense gas clouds. They were packed so tightly that they could barely maneuver. Perfect. Sentinel platforms, fire at will. Hidden among the nebula's clouds, 200 orbital weapons platforms activated their systems. Plasma lances fired, cutting burning paths through the swarm. Each shot destroyed dozens of enemies. Each platform fired hundreds of times per minute. The swarm screamed. It was not a sound that traveled through space. It was something that every human felt in their minds, a psychic howl of rage and pain. Billions of creatures dying at once, their collective consciousness broadcasting its agony across the void. But they did not stop. They adapted. They always adapted. New unit types emerging, the sensor officer warned. They are generating some kind of field that disperses the plasma before it can hit them. Catherine gritted her teeth. Switch to kinetic weapons. Hit them with everything we have. The battle changed. Missiles and railgun rounds replaced plasma fire. Human ships moved forward, engaging the swarm at closer range where their weapons were more effective. The nebula lit up with explosions that would have blinded anyone watching without protection. Commander, Nathan Gray led his carrier group directly into the heart of the fighting. Fighters launched from the Relentless, by the hundreds, each one piloted by a human who knew they might not return. They dove into the swarm, guns blazing, buying time for the larger ships to maneuver. We are taking heavy casualties on the left flank, a voice crackled over the command channel. Request immediate support. Support is on the way, Catherine replied. She redirected 3 destroyer squadrons to reinforce the faltering line. But for every gap she filled, 2 more opened. The swarm was relentless. They threw themselves at human ships, without fear or hesitation, spending lives like water. Hours passed. The battle became a blur of fire and death. Human ships fell, their crews fighting until the last moment. Swarm units died by the millions, but millions more took their place. Then Nathan spotted something on his tactical display. A massive hive ship, larger than any they had seen before, was hanging back from the main battle. Whenever it pulsed with light, the swarm units around it moved with sudden coordination. That is their command ship, he realized. It is controlling the smaller units. If we can destroy it, we can break their coordination. He opened a channel to Lieutenant Commander Rachel Kim, who led the fleet's best bomber squadron. Rachel, are you seeing what I am seeing? I see it, she replied. Her voice was calm, despite the chaos around her. That thing has to die. But getting close enough to hurt it will be almost impossible. The defensive screen around it is too thick. What if you went inside? Silence. Then Rachel laughed, a sound without humor. You want us to fly into its intake ports? Detonate our payloads from within is the only way. The outer armor is too strong, but the inside, the coordination systems, those might be vulnerable. That is a one-way trip, Nathan. You know that. He closed his eyes. Rachel had a daughter back on Earth, a little girl who was waiting for her mother to come home. I know. I am not ordering you to do this. I am asking. Another pause. Around them, ships died, and the swarm pressed closer. The battle was balanced on a knife's edge. One push in either direction would decide everything. Tell my daughter I did this for her future, Rachel finally said. Tell her that her mother loved her more than anything in the universe, and tell her that when she looks at the stars, I will be watching over her. Her squadron broke away from the main formation. 12 bombers, accelerating to maximum speed, aimed directly at the hive ship. The swarm units tried to intercept them, but they were too fast, too determined. One by one, the bombers fell to enemy fire, but the survivors pressed on. Rachel's ship was the last one standing when she reached the hive ship's intake port. She flew directly into the monster's mouth, her weapons armed and ready. The explosion tore the hive ship apart from within. A ball of fire expanded outward, consuming everything nearby. The psychic scream that followed was different from before. It was not just pain. It was confusion. Loss. The swarm had lost their coordination. Across the battle space, enemy units began moving erratically. They crashed into each other. They flew in circles. They attacked empty space where no human ships existed. All ships, press the attack, Catherine ordered. This is our chance. Do not let them regroup. The human fleet surged forward. Plasma lances fired again, cutting through enemies that no longer had the coordination to defend themselves. Missiles found their targets without interception. The tide had turned. For the next 10 hours, humanity hunted the swarm through the nebula. They destroyed hive ships by the hundreds. They burned enemy units by the billions. They gave no quarter and asked for none. When the last hive ship finally fell silent, the Meridian Nebula was filled with wreckage. Debris from destroyed vessels, both human and swarm, floated in clouds that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Admiral Catherine Powell surveyed the aftermath. 2,000 who? Man ships were gone. 400,000 soldiers had died. But the swarm was broken. The threat that had destroyed civilizations was finished. Send a message to Earth, she said quietly. Tell them we won. Tell them it is over. But even as she spoke, she knew it was not really over. The battle was finished, but the consequences had only begun. The galaxy would have to reckon with what humanity had done here, and the Council would have to face the species they had dismissed. The universe had changed in the fires of Meridian. Nothing would ever be the same again. 1 week after the Battle of Meridian, Ambassador Daniel Cruz returned to the Galactic Council chamber. The massive doors slid open before him, just as they had 3 years ago. But everything else was different. The chamber was silent. No whispered conversations. No dismissive murmurs. 12 species watched the human ambassador approach the central platform, and in their eyes was something that had never been there before. Fear, respect, shame. Daniel wore his formal diplomatic uniform, the same one he had worn when he first delivered the warning. Admiral Catherine Powell walked beside him, her military decorations gleaming under the chamber lights. Behind them came President Laura Mitchell, Commander Nathan Gray, General Christopher Hayes. They represented the species that had saved the galaxy. Hi, Arbiter.
Ow.
Zeleth rose from his elevated seat. His compound eyes reflected the light differently now, somehow dimmer than before. Ambassador Cruz, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you back. We owe you and your people a debt that can never be repaid. Daniel did not acknowledge the greeting. Instead, he stepped onto the central platform and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate who had voted against humanity's warning. 3 years ago, he began, his voice echoing through the silent space. I stood in this chamber and told you the truth. I showed you evidence of the greatest threat this galaxy has ever faced. I begged you to prepare. He activated a holographic display. It showed the footage from the Kethany border, the first contact with the swarm. Alien delegates looked away, unable to watch again. You dismissed us. You called us children. The Valish representatives said we were prone to panic. He looked directly at Counselor Morthok, whose jellyfish form pulsed with colors of deep discomfort. The Dominari High Arbiter said our technology was too primitive to detect threats that your sensors missed. He switched the display to show the aftermath of the Meridian battle. Burning wreckage stretched across the nebula. Human rescue ships moved through the debris searching for survivors. 400,000 humans died at Meridian. 400,000 of our people gave their lives protecting species that would not lift a finger to help themselves. They died for the Cathani, who laughed at us. They died for the Valish, who called us apes. They died for every species in this chamber that chose pride over survival. The silence was absolute. Not a single delegate spoke. Not a single movement disturbed the stillness. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Kim flew her bomber into the heart of a hive ship to destroy the swarm's coordination network. She left behind a 7-year-old daughter who will never see her mother again. Thousands of pilots like her made the same choice. They traded their futures for yours. Daniel's voice grew harder. Do not mistake what happened at Meridian for friendship. We did not save you because we love you. We saved you because we understand something that you have forgotten. The universe is dark and cold and filled with things that want to eat you. Survival requires vigilance. It requires preparation. It requires the willingness to fight when fighting seems hopeless. Pointed at the assembly. You forgot those lessons. You built your empires and fought your little wars and convinced yourselves that nothing could truly threaten you. You were wrong, and your arrogance nearly killed you all. High Arbiter Zeleth spread his forearms in a gesture of supplication. Ambassador Cruz, what do you want from us? Reparations? Territory? Political power? The Council is prepared to discuss any compensation humanity deems appropriate. Daniel shook his head. We do not want your compensation. We do not want your gratitude. We do not even want your apologies. He stepped closer to the holographic display, which now showed a star map of the galaxy with human territory highlighted in blue. What we want is for you to understand what happened here. Not just the battle, not just the victory, but everything that led to it. President Laura Mitchell stepped forward. It was unusual for a head of state to speak directly in council chambers, but no one dared object. Humanity has been a spacefaring species for 300 years, she said. In that time, we have built a civilization that spans dozens of worlds. We have developed technologies that rival anything in this chamber. We have created art and music and literature that expresses the best of what we are. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we have also fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. We have created weapons that could destroy our own planet. We have faced extinction from asteroids, plagues, and our own stupidity. Every generation of humans has grown up knowing that survival is not guaranteed, that the universe does not care if we live or die, that if we want to exist tomorrow, we must fight for it today. General Hayes stepped forward. Your species have had peace for so long that you forgot what struggle means. You stopped watching the darkness because you convinced yourselves that nothing in the darkness could hurt you. Humanity never had that luxury. We have always known that predators exist. We have always prepared for them. Catherine spoke last. Her voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the chamber. The humans who died at Meridian were not warriors by nature. They were teachers and farmers and engineers who learned to fight because they had to. They were mothers and fathers who kissed their children goodbye, knowing they might never come back. They were ordinary people who did extraordinary things because that is what humans do when faced with extinction. Looked around the chamber with eyes that had seen too much death. Not honor their sacrifice with empty words. Honor it by changing. Start watching the darkness again. Start preparing for threats instead of dismissing them. Start listening when someone warns you that danger is coming.
Daniel returned to the center of the platform.
The display behind him showed Earth, blue and green and beautiful against the blackness of space. The next time humanity issues a warning, you will listen. Not because we ask you to. Not because you respect us. Because you have seen what happens when you do not. You have seen 3 billion Cathani die. You have seen the third most powerful fleet in the galaxy destroyed in 47 hours. You have seen what happens when arrogance meets reality. He took a deep breath, preparing to deliver the final message. Earth's final message to this council is simple. We will always fight for survival. Ours and yours. When the darkness comes, we will stand against it. When the galaxy needs defenders, we will answer. That is who we are. That is what humanity offers. His expression hardened. But we will never forget that when we needed you, we stood alone. We will never forget that you laughed while we prepared. We will never forget that 400,000 of our people died, cleaning up a mess that your pride created. He turned and began walking toward the exit. His delegation followed. At the door, he paused and looked back one final time. Remember us, Council. Remember what we did? Remember what we are capable of. And the next time you are tempted to dismiss the warnings of a younger species, remember Meridian. Remember the humans who died so that you could live. Remember that the frightened apes you mocked turned out to be the only ones ready to face the darkness. The doors closed behind him. The chamber remained silent for a long time. Delegates who had ruled empires for millennia sat in stunned contemplation. The universe they had known was gone. A new one had taken its place. Outside, Daniel stood with his colleagues looking up at the alien stars. What happens now? Catherine asked. Daniel smiled slightly. Now we go home. We bury our dead. We rebuild our fleet. And we continue watching the darkness. You think there are more threats out there? I know there are. The swarm was just one danger in an infinite universe. There will be others. There are always others. He started walking toward their ship. But when they come, we will be ready. That is the human way. We watch, we prepare, we fight, and we survive. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the long process of changing. It would take years, perhaps decades, but the lesson of Meridian would not be forgotten. The species that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years had learned something new. Never underestimate the children of Earth. Never dismiss their warnings. Never assume that your power makes you safe, because in the end, survival belongs not to the strongest or the oldest or the most advanced. It belongs to those who refuse to quit. Those who fight when fighting seems hopeless. Those who watch the darkness and prepare for what it holds. It belongs to humanity. And humanity was watching.